Good day, everyone. Welcome to my Discovering Your Creative Self channel. In this video, I am going to share a couple of articles that I wrote about worry, how we can lessen the effects of worry, how we can nip it in the bud, and little techniques to help you manage. To begin with, I'm sharing a vendor market that my husband and I attended with my handcrafted soaps and vintage signs. It was the May 24th weekend, and it was a great show, lots of turnout. What you're viewing here is the market before the doors opened up. I like to say that I make the soaps and my husband does the selling, which he does an amazing job at. He's a natural people person. He engages people in conversation, and he has a way of just helping them feel good about who they are. And that happens to be one of our mottos in terms of my soap business, Creations Handcrafted Soaps by Sue. We want you to feel good about who you are, no matter what's going on. Now, as mentioned in this video, I'm going to share practical exercise on how to manage worry and reduce its power. I will also share a couple of articles I wrote about 10 years ago and have published in my book, Monday Moments, which will be soon to be released on Amazon. While I share notes on worry, I will be working in the background, as you can see in the video, working on creating an eyeglass holder for one of my grandchildren. And currently I'm carving out the ears for that eyeglass holder. Now the practical exercise. I call it threefold. It's not a fancy name, but it's practical. You take an 8x10 paper, you fold it into three, so you've got 3 columns. At the top of the first column, you write, "What am I afraid of?" This is the worry column, if you like, where you write out what's bothering you, what's going on. You write down the worry. Now, it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be a big paragraph or a story. You can use a word or two, just something to identify the worry. Usually, the more concise, the better, so that you don't stay too long ruminating on the worry. In the next column, the middle column, you write down the worst thing that could happen. So you've written your fear, now you're writing about, if the fear comes about, if it happens, what's the worst thing that can happen? So this is the column where we can take note of feelings associated with the fear. Now, before we get to column 3, I want to remind you that most things we worry about don't happen. They don't actually come about. Column 3. This is where we write out the best possible outcome, the best that can occur. I used to sign off my e-counseling letters with, "Always expect the best." And why not? Why would we, let's say, spend more time on the fear and worry, which tends to happen, instead of resting and leaning on the possible good outcome that can occur? None of this is magic, as you know. We won't suddenly find ourselves free of worry, but it can help ease us in the right direction. The activity can help us let go of worry and ease ourselves into a more positive view and outcome. Now, I'm going to share a couple of articles I wrote probably about 10 years ago, but the information is still very relevant. Article 1 is called Chubby Alexander. We cannot make ourselves 1 inch larger, nor move our problems 1 inch further through the activity of worry. Worry intrudes upon our composure and peace of mind. It interferes with our daytime thinking and disturbs our sleep. It brings about its petty persecution and makes onerous demands upon our nervous system. It drains our mental powers and generally mistreats us with painful harassment. Who cannot identify with that? Eventually, our resistance breaks down and we give way to worry's victory over us. Worry goads and attacks, and sometimes it drives us to a place of desperation. It brings about absolutely no good. There is no benefit. Nothing is accomplished by worry. I tried to explain this principle to my young friend Alexander, but he refuted the statement. He said that worry is a natural response to life, and he argues that we have a right to worry. Imagine that. It's my privilege, it's my right to worry. Well, he says it has its place, like all other emotions in life. So he's arguing in favor of worry, which, as a counselor, I can't really do that. We all know that we don't want worry and we'd like to eradicate it from our life. But also we know that it will occur, so we try to gather up techniques to help us manage it. Alexander's reasoning goes something like this. He would say, if you rock on a rocking chair long enough, eventually it will creep across the floor. It will move. You will go places, not far, but you will be in a different place from where you started. And then he concludes, worry has its place in our life. I find it difficult to argue the virtues of worry, I told Alexander. And there's no inherent worth. It's detrimental to our health. Well, Alexander argued that if we worry, we might find a solution to our problem. Worry is good, so he says, and I still disagree. I can understand Alexander's arguments. He worries most about his height, so he's told me. Or at least he used to worry about it. He stands 5 foot 1 inch. He says he's annoyed when he has to stretch up, push up on his toes to meet the puckering lips of a great date. Those are his words. He says he's tired of looking for a curb to stand on or something so he can be taller to reach down to kiss his girl. I said to him, well, how do you think women feel when we have to bend our neck up to catch a kiss? I don't care about that, he said. That's the way it's supposed to be. Alexander is a salesman by trade. He rents 2 front bedrooms in a boarding house. He enjoys the company of his landlady, who cooks and cleans for him and happens to be as short as he is. One Saturday morning, the landlady thought she saw Alexander leave the house, and she decided it would be a good time to go clean his 2 rooms. She had just begun wiping the cloth over the tables when she heard a bumping noise in the closet. Well, being a brave woman, particularly in the light of day, she marched over and swung open the door, and then she let out a scream when she found Alexander hanging upside down like Houdini in a straitjacket. "What on earth are you doing?" the landlady had asked. Alexander had purchased a special contraption to hang himself upside down by the ankles from a rod in the bedroom closet. He explained to his landlady, "I'm stretching the muscles in my legs to make myself taller." When Alexander told me his story about the landlady in the closet, that doesn't sound very good, but you know what I mean, I couldn't help but bring in my final points. And I said, worry cannot add a single inch to your height. It can't make one hair on your head grow. And then he stopped me. He puts up his hand and he says, I get your point, I get your point. The problem with worry is that it seems to have a life of its own. It wants to take over. It runs a course through our heart and mind. It starts, and we often find it very difficult to get it stopped. Often I've found the very thing we worry about changes. It seems to rearrange itself and looks different the next day. But the fact that worry is there at times can be a constant. And we're trying to eradicate it. We're trying to fight against it. What can we do with this worry? There is a psychological study that claimed worry could be stopped by using a 3-step technique. Now, this is different than my 3-fold column, slightly different. First, you recognize worry when it starts. And then secondly, you arrest it as soon as it starts. The arresting part is where we run into difficulties. How do we actually do that? And the third thing is that you save up your worry thoughts for a 30-minute worry session to be conducted later on in the day. Simple worries can be wiped away with what we may call an erasing cloth, if there was such a thing. So they have a short account, they're gone in no time at all. Some worries are insistent. They're the type that keep us awake at night. They rummage through our minds, entwining our hearts, and they will not let us go. It's got a grip on us. It's as though they expect attention. And so because we can't sleep, for they're roaming about in our mind, we rise and we feed the worry. We work through various fear and concern scenarios, all for naught. Worry is like a poison, forcing the payment of a slow, insidious death. In conclusion, identify your fears. Accept that they are there. They're real. They're your fears. There's no denying that. But it doesn't mean that we need to dwell on them, because usually the things we fear don't happen. Write the worst case scenario and then write the positive, the best that can occur. And when you do that, you are redirecting your thinking. And gradually, if you keep doing that, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. As you keep doing that, you are rewriting the story. You're redirecting your thinking so that you spend less time on the worry and more time on your own strengths and abilities to manage. What happened to Alexander? He eventually gave up worrying over his lack of height, realized there's nothing he could do to change that. But what he did do is he took a sales job in France, and there he met this wonderful petite lady whom he married and grew a family with. I remember Alexander's note to me. He said, "I got the great woman. She's from France, the place of petite women," he says. And then I said, well, height is in the eye of the beholder. Our acceptance of a particular problem or difficulty and our perception can change how we actually deal with those worries that occur. The next article I'm going to share illustrates some things that can happen between husband and wife regarding worry. The article is titled, "Wasted Air Worrying." My husband and I sat in St. John's Airport waiting for our names to be called. We were flying standby. Sunday's flight had been cancelled, and we were trying our luck with the Monday flight. At check-in, we discovered the flight was completely booked, and 10 people arrived before us, also looking for standby seats, because they had also missed the Sunday flight with the weather and so forth. So the outcome didn't look good. We decided to go have a coffee and await our fate. Our names had been registered with the girl at the desk, and we were just waiting to find out if we would be called and get on this flight or not. My husband began musing over the week, his concern. What if we don't get on this flight? I need to get back to work. If worse comes to worse, I'll pay full fare for another flight, and you can stay here and you can come when you get on standby. I touched his arm and said, "Look, save your breath. We don't know the outcome of this yet. We don't have all the information. Just wait and see what's going to happen." Waiting for more information is often a technique that we can use to help delay some of the worry that we have. Because often we're looking at the what ifs, and the what ifs don't usually contain additional information that we may use to make a plan or a summary of events. So wait until you have enough information. To that line of reasoning, my husband argued that he had enough information. Look at the flight, look at the facts, he says. I need to plan. The flight is full, 10 people stand by. Where are the seats? He felt he had enough information, so he continued down his worry path. My idea was, let's wait until the plane is actually gone without us before we make any further plans, instead of trying to figure out the contingency plans when we don't have the end story on standby yet. Sometimes our instincts will suggest a plan. They'll suggest a way of coping. And if we're careful, we can listen to that. So in this particular airport situation, I had said to my husband, look, save your energies for the big stuff. I've got a feeling, that was my instincts, I've got a feeling all your surmising is wasted air. I've got a gut feeling that we're going to get on this plane. Well, to that, he just smiled and left me and went back to the check-in counter to see how things were progressing. It turned out my instincts were right. 15 minutes before flight departure, our names were called. All the standbys got on, even to the point where they had asked one of the technicians, who was also on the standby, if he would take a later flight so that we could actually have enough seats to get on. As we entered the ramp, my husband put up his hand and high fives. You were right, he says. We did it. This is great. But can you see how a lot of his earlier surmisings to worry about what's going to happen, this route, that route, this thing he'd have to do, none of that was needed. He just wasted his air worrying on that. And in retrospect, we could have actually just sat there, had a cup of coffee, waited patiently, relaxed, and waited for more information to come forward before we made our contingency plans, which, as it turned out, the things that we feared didn't happen, and we didn't need another plan. Wasted air? That's a question. Human nature tends to waste breath on things that might happen and usually don't. We surmise and recount the what-ifs and allow ourselves to worry before the final outcome has been drawn. So how can we know where to expend our energies for change and when to let go? Well, we can't always know. There's a fine balance to be found in knowing when to put on patience and when to wait for the outcome before we start making that final call. Thanks for watching and listening. And if you have any questions about any of these techniques, ideas, or any comments that you want to make, please feel free to share, because I always learn by what people have shared and what they've gone through, their experiences, because there are patterns in life that teach us a lot of things. And as a counselor, I got to listen to a lot of those patterns, and a summary begins to present itself. So you begin to find out what works and what doesn't. Remember, engaging in your creative abilities, however great or small, helps us manage a lot of things in life.